Well, well, well. It is Monday. Welcome to the last Monday in April 2025. I hope it's a good one. Welcome April 28th, 2025. Boy, do we have some stuff prepared for you today. So let's get into the way that we usually do. Welcome to the HEF podcast. That is the podcast of the Home Education Foundation. That's what HEF stands for. It's an organization that was founded by Brenda Dickinson back in the 1992, I believe, actually. And we're very thankful for all the work that Brenda has done over the last 40 years to fight to be heard and recognized as a home education parent, and to work with legislators to draft bills that would give parents their rights as home educating parents, to really truly be those parent educators, being the ultimate authority on decisions for their child's education. And that's what we're all about here at the Home Education Foundation. Truly, we love when parents exercise their rights over their freedom of choice in whatever direction they choose to take that education. We want, deep down, we want parents not just to choose home education, but to choose the education path that works best for them. And I do think that sometimes we get a little distracted by going so hard on home education that we forget that we also want strong public schools, because a lot of people rely on those, and we need them to be good and strong. That we don't really get into the weeds of how public education and public schools work, but we're very interested to see that they not just fall apart into nothing, because they're there to serve a huge part of the community, those who don't choose to educate their own children. But it's our mission at the Home Education Foundation to make sure that parents, when they choose to exercise the fullness of that freedom and to become the teacher, they're on their own and do their own thing, that their rights are there that allow them to do so. And that's what we fight for. And we have sponsors that help us out. So we want to give a special thank you to Arete. We really appreciate all the work that you've done being with us behind the scenes. If you're watching any of these, we love you and we appreciate you. FPEA, Suzanne. The FPEA convention is coming up, and if you haven't got your tickets and your accommodations, you probably are out of luck. But there may be room and time yet. It's a wonderful convention. It's huge. It is a historic convention in the state of Florida, and we're very thankful that they are one of the big community building organizations for home education and parent educators across the state. And we're very thankful that they sponsor us, because we love collaborating and coming together on important issues that affect all of those home education families. Fisher Precious Metals, thank you very much for sponsoring us as well. You know, I think people lose sight sometimes of the fact that if you have a business and you love freedom, you may also love us and the work that we do. And that's kind of where Fisher Precious Metals comes in, and Arete. We thank you both for being there with us. And TBHC Group hosts the largest conference in the Tampa Bay area. So we love that they're also one of our big top sponsors. So thank you all, and thank you to every single parent who is also a supporter. We see your donations come in. It hurts when you cancel them, but we understand sometimes credit cards get stolen or something happens. And, you know, I think the ones that I've seen kind of fall off, they go, we're just switching cards, don't freak out. And, you know, I love that about our community, how they come together and communicate over that. And the support does help. We have a lot of tools that we're working on building. I spend a lot of time lobbying and working my own full-time job as a marketer, but then also trying to build some of these organizational communication tools that we have in the podcast and putting informational resources together. And there's just a lot that goes into it. And it'd be nice to be able to expand our team little by little, and grow what we can do and how we can serve. And we need the support to be able to do that. It wouldn't take much. $5 or $10 here or there goes a very, very long way. We have 155,000 registered as home education students. There's even more that are registered as PEP, or some of those that are hybrid. And so we're very aware that even a small percentage of families that could come together across Florida to donate $5 or $10 a month as you can do on our website, would make a world of difference. So if you're thinking about it and you're not yet a supporter, look at all the people who are, and be among them. And to all of those who are our supporters, we very, very, very much thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being with us each step of the way through all of this. And so if you have been following us, you know that this legislative session has also been just kind of like last year, but on a different topic, a bit of a wild one, to say the least. This year, and basically not just this year, but since COVID, when families in all across the public schools went out of the public schools and then poured back in, there's been an odd shift in kind of the balance between homeschoolers or home education families and their interactions with the school system. There is a home education office, and I've talked with some of those folks who run those home education offices, and I'm very thankful for them. Some of them have a wonderful heart to help. And as with every position anywhere, sometimes people just want to collect a paycheck and they don't really want to do a job. But that's everywhere you go and in every branch of any organization anywhere. And it's no surprise that it's also among the home education offices in some of the districts. That's life. But for those, there's a lot of them that participate. There's a lot of them that are really, really helpful. And we're very thankful for the work that they do, because they're kind of unsung heroes in a way. They do a lot behind the scenes, and they manually do a lot of things that other things can be done automatically, and they do take their time. And I think they're well-meaning, even if sometimes there's not always like the understanding of statutes that we wish was there. But we also appreciate that they collaborate with us on things that are ongoing. One issue that we've had since COVID, though, in that reintegration, is with sports. And it's been surprising to me the number of district athletic directors, superintendents, and staff that at varying levels, you have some who are like, hey, just let the kids play. What's the big deal? And then you have some who have carved it out as their territory. It's the schools are ours. We determine who gets to come and participate and who doesn't. Actually, the statutes determine that. And I think that's something I would love to dive into today. Before I do that, my intent is to take this next section of video and cut it out so that it becomes a shareable piece of content, so that if anybody else is struggling with this, or anyone needs information about this, it might be easier to share what comes next. Before we do that, Brenda, good morning, or good day. Is there anything you would like to say? I've been monologuing like a Disney villain again.
Well, I think before you start with that, you need to update on what's going on with the session, and the fact that we're hoping and praying we're going to get some of these issues that we've been working on over the finish line. But like some sessions, you just don't. You build momentum, and then something out of your control takes over, and the budget has taken over.
Yeah, I think so. We had two bills that we were really hyper concerned about. One of them was allowing for clarity and definitions over some key things to deal with scholarship and home education instructional programs. And one of the other ones had to do with clarifying this issue that we've been having with the extracurricular activities and sports. And while we were working on the extracurricular and activities bill, Senator Simon and Representative Abbott both offered up bills that already had addressed the subject. And so the conversation kind of leaned toward, well, hey, take your idea and amend it onto theirs and roll it that way. And so we thought, okay, that's great. There's a limited number of bills that the House can do on each representative. They only get 7 bills. And so, taking up another slot with an adjacent bill that's very, very close that could just easily be attached onto that makes perfect sense. Let's just roll with the amendment. And so we started working that angle. Meanwhile, our other bills started to get worked in the House, but then the Senate wanted to take our information and our language and roll it into their big budget bill. because they thought, well, this will surely go through. We'll be doing them a favor. And then, the senators who are working with them, running their language, will put this onto the big committee bill instead and take it off of their plate. And I think they were trying to do favors, like be helpful, not do favors, but to be helpful in that move. But what it did was it ended up killing the momentum we had on the House side with our bill, which was moving along. And so then where we're at with all of those is all of the language that are important to us and all the issues that are important to us are lumped into the budget. And so now that the House and the Senate are arguing over the budget and what's going to happen, our issues are either being used as bargaining chips because they're important to someone or not someone, et cetera, or they're just kind of getting lumped in with the giant waves of ideas that are really focused on other issues. And so we're trying to keenly watch to make sure that we don't create unintended consequences as all of the changes are going to come to those bills pretty soon. And it seems like they're in a deadlock. I have spoken to someone inside, and there may be movement. It seemed like they were just going to be able to perhaps pass a skeleton budget because they didn't seem like they were going to agree on much of anything. But there's a good chance that we might see something move. But I don't know. I have no definitive answer. The person who I was speaking to was out of hope, and then they said, well, there's a ray of hope. So that's as much as anyone can offer. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep you informed. We'll post updates. So just be aware of that. And then for our extracurricular bill, this is what was really interesting. Senate Bill 248, Senator Simon's bill that deals with this issue, initially started addressing a very important issue with the private schools, where it was targeting private school students that everybody else is allowed to play, but a very small section of private school students. And the bill basically said, hey, let's remove that caveat and let them play as well. There's no reason not to. And then it's a great bill. And then they added our language onto it. And I think it became a greater bill. And then it became a bargaining chip. So in the House, they decided to take the Senate bill as it came over in messages. And then they laid down the House bill and said, we don't want what's in the House bill. We want to run with the Senate bill. And then they said, but we want to delete everything in the Senate bill and replace it with the House bill language and then send it back to the Senate. And my head nearly blew off of my shoulders when I saw that, because I'm like, what in the world is going on? How did we get here? And what's next? And you're probably wondering the same thing. I have spoken with Senator Simon. He's very interested in seeing his version of the bill make it through. He is a fighter, and he's a great guy. And he's listening and attentive to the needs of home education families as it comes to this. And I'm very thankful to have someone like him because he is a champion. And he's proven that with his championship ring. It's great to have a champion in your corner. So we'll keep working with him and see where we can get this massaged to. It's right now back in returning messages to the Senate after the House has done their magic with it. And then we'll see where we go from here. Hopefully we either see this get turned right back around and amended back to say what it said before, or a blend of something and sent back to the House, this is kind of the stage we're at with negotiating back and forth as the bill moves. So,
but I might add, Friday is the last day
yes,
of the regular session. They may come back to special session, but if so, all bills die except the budget.
Yeah. So that's the state of things. It is a wild roller coaster, but even if the bill dies, there's something that we're working on behind the scenes to help address some of the clarity. I don't think the statutes lack clarity. I think the statutes are actually very clear, and that's what we're going to walk through today. Because as I was talking with some of the home education parents who have been running into this issue, they don't feel confident. They don't feel confident in what it says. They don't feel like, oh, you have to be a legal scholar to understand it all. And no, but you might need your share button after we're done with this video. So I kind of want to start us off with what is the statute and what does it say? So let's start at the very beginning. What's the issue? What's the problem? And what's the statute? So in 1006.15, this is lovingly called the Brenda Dickinson Act. And parens 3C, which you can see on the screen, it establishes a home education student's eligibility to participate in public school sports, extracurricular activities. We call them sports. It establishes higher up in the statute the importance of extracurricular activities. And it states an individual home education student is eligible to participate at the public school to which the student would be assigned according to the district school board attendance area policies. That's their zoned school, or which the student could choose to attend pursuant to 1002.31, which is the closed open enrollment statute reference, or may develop an agreement to participate at a private school in the interscholastic extracurricular activities of that school, provided the following conditions are met. And then it goes to list a series of conditions we'll come back to at the end. So the question really is, what's the problem? The problem that we were running into, because it seems pretty straightforward, they can participate at the school they're zoned for, or a school they could choose through open enrollment, or a private school. So there's three choices. The problem is that as a parent starts to exercise that right that's spelled out for them, the schools tell them, oh, well, there's no room here. There's no way for you to play at this school. There's no way for you to participate because there's not enough room. The school's at capacity. And almost as a very clever way of just dismissing all home education students, wouldn't you know, all schools seem to be at capacity except the zoned school. So we run into this bad faith gatekeeping mechanism right out of the gate, and we have to deal with that. Parents have to deal with that. And I think it's very important as you start to deal with that for you to understand what your rights are so that you can feel confident. And putting it into a format like this will allow you to listen to it over and over and over and kind of get the hang of it and get the gist. So we're going to break it down. So the school is quote unquote at capacity, therefore it is not on the list of schools that you could choose to participate in for extracurricular activities. And that's exactly the issue we're going to deal with today. So let's start. Where do we start? Well, we start by looking at what the statute says and what statutes are involved in understanding the language of that statute. So right off the bat, the very statute that we begin with is 1006.153C, and it references 1002.31. 1002.31 actually references, I'm going to pull it up over here as I screen hop around, it actually references 1003.03 when it comes to capacity. So then we go back to our list and we go, add that to the list. Let's figure out what 1003.03 says about capacity. Well, it starts to define capacity and core curricula, and it's based off of the Constitution. So now we know that we need to look at both the Constitution and we need to look at the definitions. So that makes us add 1003.01 to the list, and we're going to add the Constitution, and then we're going to reverse the list. So now we've got all of the statutes on a list that we need to look at, and we're going to look at them in reverse order because the Constitution sets the framework, and then the statutes implement the framework, and then we read the statutes and interpret their intent. So let's reverse the order and start from there. Before we do that, there are some rules, and I didn't make these rules up, so don't be mad at me if you don't like them. But the rules for statutory construction and interpretation there is a document that I found where the Supreme Court.gov has a document that will actually give you a full PDF, and it gives you case law that backs it up, and it gives you a ton of information, because I'm such a nerd. This is all I do with my spare time now. But it's easy to reference. So I have pulled out the ones that apply to what we're going to look at today. Some of it applies to criminal law and other things. Then we're not going to look at some of those because we don't need to. But one, the law should be given its plain meaning whenever possible. So you read it, it says it, you treat it as if that's what it meant. You read it for its plain meaning whenever possible. Then we go on further. Statutes must be interpreted so as to be entirely harmonious with all laws as a whole. So you can't take one law and then it contradict another law and just pick and choose which one you want to use. You have to treat them all as if they're harmonious and they're all essentially read as a whole. So every word within a statute, this is number 3, sorry, I've moved on to number 3. Every word within a statute is there for a purpose and should be given its due significance. So if a word is mentioned, it isn't treated as optional or, oh, that's just filler language. Each word is argued over and debated over and sent to committee stops, and then the governor looks at it and signs it. So each word is intended to be read as if it's intentional. Verse 4. Number 4. This isn't church. Number 4, all laws are to be interpreted consistent with the legislative intent for which they were originally enacted. That one's key here for us. So we'll go into that one, but that one's very important. You have to read a law for its original enacted intent. And so sometimes a law goes through changes, and as a law gets changed or updated, looking back at the history of updates can give you a clue into what that meaning change with the word changes is, and that becomes important. So number 5, presumption may not be used in determining a statute. This is a key one because as we start to argue with superintendents, their attorneys, district athletic directors, the FHSAA, and we start to talk to people who are involved, the arguments that are thrown back are oftentimes, well, this is not fair for this person, or this is unfair for these people, or this creates a situation we have to deal with over here. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily change the interpretation of the statute, right? So you can't take the presumptions about what we think is fair or not fair in a given circumstance and read that into determining what the statute means. We have to go to what the statute originally enacted was intended to mean and what each word says in connection to the other laws that it has. When a term, there goes my dog. That's how you know these are live. When a term is defined within statute, number 6, within a statute, that definition is provided to supersede and not enlarge other definitions of the word found elsewhere, such as in other titles or codes. So when a statute includes a explicit definition, we must follow that definition, even if it varies from a term that we would normally use in everyday life. And that's essentially what that means. So this is going to get boring. I'm sorry. But when we look at extracurriculars and core curriculars, or the word capacity, right? Because capacity is one of the key words we're looking at here. We have to determine what capacity can apply to or can mean, and then we're going to use all of the statutes to build a comprehensive meaning of that, even if the word capacity might mean something else in real life. For example, we may say, oh, the school is at capacity. That means that there's a physical grounds, or there's a school grounds, and for the student to be on the school grounds, this or that, the other, it's like actually capacity in the statute, in the education statutes, refers to one very specific thing, and we're going to go through what that means. So we can't lump in a bunch of other ways we commonly use the term. We have to use it by its statutory definition. And that's what number 6 is. Number 7 is expressio unius est exclusio alterius. And I have casted a very awesome Harry Potter spell. What it really means in Latin is that if it's not listed, it was intentionally left out. If it was excluded, it was meant to be excluded. And you read it that way. So we're going to get to that too, because when it comes to the criteria for participating in extracurricular activities, nowhere among the criteria is listed capacity. So when something is left out, it's read as intentionally being left out. And that becomes important later. We'll get to that as well. And then number 8, expressum facit cessare tacitum rule, which is what is expressed makes what is silent cease. So if you have an idea about something, or you're using vague language, or, well, the statute doesn't say I couldn't do this, what it does expressly state makes the silence cease. So this is now the thing that becomes in focus, because this is what it states. I think that's really important to understand all of that kind of backdrop as we start to then, before we read what they actually say, let's get into understanding those things. And if you're listening to this and you're listening to it over and over and over, I'll try to talk slower, because sometimes I put things on double speed when I'm listening, and people have told me that they can't do that when I speak. And so, the state constitution, Florida State Constitution, Title 9, or Article 9, sorry, deals with the public education. And you can't see this, it's so tiny on the screen. But I want to draw attention to, it says the education of children is a fundamental value of the people of the state of Florida, period. It is therefore a paramount duty of the state to make adequate provision for the education of all children residing within its borders. Adequate provision shall be made by law for a uniform, efficient, safe, secure, and high-quality system of free public schools that allows students to obtain a high-quality education for the establishment, maintenance, and operation of institutions of higher learning and other public education programs that the needs of the people may require. By the way, that's where your homeschool rights are anchored, is in that section where it says, and other public education programs that the needs of the people may require. For home education parents, we require that. We love that. That's where it's anchored. And so then the statutes go on to declare what other public education options there are, and that's where home education gets listed as among the additional options. So just a side note. Move on to assure. This is the amendment that was later added. To assure that children attending public schools obtain a high-quality education, the legislature shall make adequate provision to ensure that by the beginning of the 2010 school year, there are a sufficient number of classrooms so that, and then it lists 1, 2, and 3 for the different age groups. And then at the paragraph beneath that, it says this in express language. The class size requirements of this subsection do not apply to extracurricular classes, period. Then it goes to talk about payment and money and on. It's worth noting that the very state constitution that added the class size amendment also added an exclusion for extracurricular activities. That is very, very key, because remember, if it's expressly stated, it's important. Each word is carefully crafted and meant to be read as such, and then it's expressly stated. So that's very important. Now everything that we read from the statutes has to include that lens through which we read it. So when we start with it, we very clearly see that in the public education of Section 1, Article 9, the class size requirements of this subsection do not apply to extracurricular classes. All right, so now we can go back to our list of statutes that we were looking at, and we can very clearly see that with capacity and extracurriculars, the Constitution on the list we've added does not apply. So let's roll on down to the next one on the list, 1003.01. This section of statute, this is where the legislative intent and the historicity of a statute is important, because this statute was created in response to the constitutional amendment. But you saw the date that was on that, right? That was meant to be fully enacted by 2010. So by 2011, that was fully enacted. But guess when the original statute for 1006.153C was written? Brenda, you know the answer. 1996. Yes, 1996. And they named it in honor of Craig Dickinson, the Craig Dickinson Act. So it's a very familiar year to us. I was 13, and I didn't have the Craig Dickinson Act or Brenda Dickinson. So I didn't get to do any of this. And it would have been great had I been able to do that. But it's important to realize that from 1996 to 2011, the original intent of the statute read was your zoned school, a school that you could choose through open enrollment, or a private school, and there were no class size restrictions at that time. So that you can't read that the original intent was that a class size restriction be applied to them, because there wasn't one at that time. It's also very key in determining how something is interpreted. All right, so let's go to 1003.01, because that sets the stage for definitions that are used in 03. And we're going to go to 03 next, but let's start with the definitions. It defines core curricula. What is core curricula? Courses in language, arts, reading, math, social studies, and science. And then it says very specifically in parens B, excluding extracurricular courses. And then also again, and that's for the grades 4 through 8 subjects. And then again from 9 to 12, it very expressly states excluding extracurricular courses. All right. That seems pretty clear, seems pretty straightforward, that it's defining core curricula. This is important. Core curricula does not apply. So any of the restrictions that are applied later to something that is for core curricula can't apply to extracurriculars, because the very definition of core curricula excludes extracurriculars. And if that wasn't clear enough, there's actually a definition for extracurricular courses further down in that statute. 1003.01 parens 11 defines extracurricular courses, and it means that all courses that are not defined as core curricula courses, which may include but are not limited to physical education, fine arts, performing fine arts, career education, and courses that may result in college credit. The term is limited in meaning and used for the sole purpose of designating classes that are not subject to the maximum class size requirements established in Section 1, Article 9 of the state constitution. I don't know how to spell it out more than that. To me, it's I think what's happened is because the definitions and pieces are fractured off in different sections and it's not linearly done in one spot, it's easy to misunderstand or pretend like it doesn't exist when we're just going about our daily life and going, oh, well, that's my school and there's no room in it. Let's go back and let's take a look at all the statutes. No one does that really, you know. And I think that we should. But so let's go back to our list and update it. What does 1003.01 say about capacity and extracurriculars by the definition? It doesn't apply. It very expressly even states that in the definition part of the statute. Well, if that's not enough, let's just keep rolling. 1003.03, maximum class size. So now that we've got the definitions of what's core curriculum, what's extracurricular, let's go into what is the class size. So this kind of lays out class size, and it states that each year, on or before October, student membership survey, the following class size maximums shall be satisfied. And it goes to talk about the maximum number here or there in a class, and it mentions the core curricula courses in public school classrooms. Do you know if you do a Control F search in this statute, 1003.03, you will not find the word extracurricular because it does not apply to extracurriculars. What's not a part of that statute is really important, because if it expressly states something but is silent on the other, that's meant to be read intentionally. And so I think it's meant to be read intentionally that it didn't apply. Capacity issue, and the capacity limitation is a gatekeeping mechanism, doesn't apply to extracurricular sports. So, capacity and extracurricular, 1003.03. Let's go back to our list and check it off. Capacity doesn't apply. Now let's go back to the open enrollment reference in 1002.31. So the mechanism through which a student can choose their zone school, a school they could choose through open enrollment, or a private school that will make an agreement with them. So let's take a look at 1002.31 because it seems to be the one everyone's got the attention on when determining whether a school could be placed on that list a student could choose from. What's really interesting is the word choice. The word choices in that statute, 1006.15, state that it needs to be a school a student could choose. Doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be on a list, and the criteria doesn't mean that it had to be available by capacity. We'll go to that later, but I just wanted to drop that in here. 1002.31, closed open enrollment, paren 6A. The only mention in this entire statute of extracurriculars, because remember how from the Constitution to the definitions to the class size, it keeps stating not extracurricular, not extracurricular, not extracurricular. Then we get to closed open enrollment, and it's not necessarily dealing with capacity limitations, it's dealing with the mechanism of closed open enrollment. And it says, okay, and here's how that gets addressed when it comes to extracurriculars. 6A, a school district or charter may not delay eligibility or otherwise prevent a student participating in controlled open enrollment or a choice program from being immediately eligible to participate in interscholastic and intrascholastic extracurricular activities. This is the only mention of extracurricular activities in that statute, and it's only mentioned to say that the district may not delay eligibility or otherwise prevent them from participating. That's pretty clear too. And then parens B, which is right below that, clarifies a student may not participate in a sport. So here's a not, by the way, for the student. A student may not participate in a sport if that student participated in that same sport at another school during that school year. So that becomes the limiting factor for whether or not in open enrollment a student may be denied access to extracurricular activities. And remember what we talked about. If it's excluded, it's meant to be excluded. It's read as intentional. So this being the only reason to deny participation in extracurricular activities for a student is this. This is actually going to be referenced again in the 1006.15. So we'll see that carried over as well, but we won't see anything about capacity for the limitation of extracurricular participation. So let's keep rolling. Now we can check off 1002.31 on the list as we're going down. We've got each of these statutes. Check, check, check. Doesn't apply, doesn't apply, doesn't apply. So why are we applying it as a gatekeeping mechanism? Let's go to 1006.153C and let's see if the criteria for being eligible to participate in the activity requires core curricula classrooms capacity or not. Number one, the home education student must meet the requirements of the home education program that they're in according to 1002.41. Okay, that means they have to actually have a letter of intent to be enrolled in a home education program. Boom, got it. They can't say they're a homeschooler and not be registered as a homeschooler and participate, right? So we've got some sort of criteria. We need a piece of paper that shows that we submitted our letter of intent and that we are legit. Understood. Number two, during the period of participation at a school, the home education student must demonstrate educational progress as required in paragraph B in all subjects taken in the home education program by a method of evaluation agreed upon by the parent and the school principal. So the parent and the school principal can decide upon what that criteria is. Got it. The home education student, number three, must meet the same residency requirements as other students in the school at which he or she participates. Great. And what were those? What were those requirements per the Constitution? Well, if you go back to the Constitution, the state Constitution, and you read that, it states that these public education programs are for the students of Florida. So it's given a scope of participation. Okay, great. Do they meet those? Let's find out. I sit on the board, the PLAC, for the FHSAA, that's the Florida High School Athletics Association, and we're required to sit in on some of the cases where they're asking for a student to be exempted and be allowed to play. And they come from other countries, and they're here as a student who is participating in a program that allows them to do that. And they might be leaving in the middle of a school year, and they might have been a good player, and then all the team is left without a player. And I watch them vote, and they vote on these, and they say, yeah, let them play. Yeah, let them play. And then the moment that a home education student tries to play, they go, oh, you can't play. I know you pay your taxes and all that good stuff, but like, not you. People from another country, yes, but not you. It's wild to me. The student, number 5, as far as criteria goes, the student must register with the school his or her intent to participate in interscholastic extracurricular activities as a representative of the school before participation. Let me ask you a question. How do they do that? What's the mechanism by which you do that and you register your intent? I'll give you a hint. It's 1002.31, open enrollment. The way that you satisfy that requirement is by going to the open enrollment and selecting the school and saying, this is the school I would like to participate in. And then they go, oh, you can't. It's at capacity. But then capacity is only for core curricula classes, so it falls apart. This is the criteria for registering your intent. So you do that. And then number 6, a student who transfers from a home education program to a public school before or during the first grading period of the school year is academically eligible to participate in the interscholastic extracurricular activities during the first grading period, provided the student has a successful evaluation from previous school year pursuant to subparagraph 2. Okay, that makes sense. And then number 7, any public school or private school student who has been unable to maintain academic eligibility for participation in interscholastic extracurricular activities is ineligible to participate in such activities as a home education student until the student has successfully completed one grading period in home education pursuant to subparagraph 2 to become eligible for participation. That makes sense too. You were in public school or private school and you were ineligible. You're ineligible as a home education student until you can prove that you are meeting the other standards. Get back in line with the standards. There are standards here and criteria for participation, and I got to tell you, capacity is not one of them. It blows my mind that we even have to talk about this, because to me, I look at it and it's so very clear. It's so very clear. But when it comes to application, it's gatekept. Well, the superintendents, if you listen to the way that they speak in the committees, they're our schools and they're our children. And they take personal ownership, it seems, of these entities, and they carve, gatekeeping mechanisms around them. And I don't know if they're upset that after COVID, a lot of parents took their kids home and then decided, hey, we like the freedoms that we have, and didn't necessarily send them back to public schools. And maybe they're upset about that. Maybe have less funding per student in the seats because they didn't go back, and they're upset about that. And I get that they're upset and frustrated about things like that, but that doesn't give us the right to presume that the statutes give us power we don't have, that give us the ability to guard something off and rope it off that we don't have. I'm going to get to the questions. I see the questions coming in, but let me finish my diatribe here and so that we can cut this cleanly. So what does this mean? The law should be given as its plain meaning wherever possible. It's pretty straightforward. It says 3 things. 1, let the student play at their zone school. 2, let them play at a school they could choose through open enrollment. Or 3, let them play at a private school if the private school agrees and makes an agreement with them. That makes perfect sense. And now they could have, by plain meaning, if they didn't mean for a home education student, to be able to play at another school, only the zone school, they could have just left that other part out. They could have left out the open enrollment reference. And in fact, I believe Brenda has told me this story before. Whenever she was fighting for these rights for students, she was losing hand over fist to be able to get these students recognition and being able to play at all, that she was thankful just to be able to let them play at their zone school so that they could be involved and have that opportunity. And someone else from the, you said was the superintendent's
Association lobbyist.
association lobbyist, came to her and said, why don't we allow the students to play at any school they could choose and put the open enrollment reference in there so they could pick that school through open enrollment and play at it? And Brenda was like, if you think we can get it, yeah, of course. It's wild to me that when we read it on its face, it's being applied across the board in almost every district. There are some cases that we win here or there, but they lock down and they say, oh, the school's at capacity, you can't play. School's at capacity, go play for your zone school. And it doesn't make sense because the statute very expressly states, and if you read it for its plain meaning, it means let's give them access to the school close to them, the school they're zoned for. Let's give them access to schools beyond that so that they have a choice. And let's give them access to private schools if the private school is agreeable to it. All of this makes perfect sense if you look at it for its plain meaning. Statutes must be interpreted so as to be entirely harmonious with all laws as a whole. Well, every other law states that the capacity is only for core curricula and expressly not for extracurricular activities. So where do we get the gatekeeping mechanism where we even allow that to be used? 3, every word in the statute is there for a purpose and significance. I think we've seen those, and it's kind of obvious, it should be obvious, what they say and what they mean. All laws are to be interpreted consistent with legislative intent for which they were originally enacted. In 1996, when this was enacted, capacity wasn't in the Constitution, it wasn't in the statutes, and it wasn't a valid gatekeeping mechanism. And it's not a valid gatekeeping mechanism now, period. And then presumption may not be used in determining statute. Well, then I get questions all the time. Well, then how are we supposed to do this? Or how are we supposed to figure out that? Or what if they pack a team with a bunch of homeschool students and they have a super team with super talent? That's a presumption, one, that they're going to do that. And you can't use that to determine statute intent and enactment. But 2, that's a problem. Figure it out. I think we've got great laws when it comes to slapping people on the wrist for recruiting. That's a wonderful way of trying to gatekeep that. If you don't like it, you don't think it works, fine tune it. You know, we've got all kinds of other issues that do get into play, but none of them can be presumed as a way to read the statute differently than what it says. And that's the key. That's the key. All right, so let's move further down. What does this mean?
And let me just say, that was an original argument. What if? Well, the law's been in place since 1996. We've never built a super team with homeschoolers. So yes. History tells us that won't happen.
They've had plenty of opportunities to do that over the years that this has been in effect.
So I'm going to interpret what Brenda said for the young people. Miss me with that one. You can miss me with that language. So what does this mean? What does this mean as we comb through all of this? It very specifically and expressly means that capacity is not sufficient citation for gatekeeping rights established in statute. Period. You need something better if you're going to deny a parent their rights that are expressly stated and given and delivered in statute. You better have a very good reason and maybe another law that contradicts so that you have even a statutory basis for trying to interpret that inconsistency with another statute. And that's where I actually won one of the cases in, I think it was Clay County, because at this point the student had started to participate in wrestling. And participation can include tryouts or early practicing and things like that. So he had already started rolling with the team. They all liked him. This principal liked him. The athletic director liked him. Then the county athletic director the district athletic director was like, well, I'm being leaned on. We can't do this. And then I said, okay, great. So here's a statute that now doesn't allow him to play at any other school. And then you have these statutes that don't even give permission for capacity. I know that you'll argue that they do, but they don't. But let's just say, for example, now you've got 2 statutes and you've got to decide which one you want to violate. What would you like to do? And he said, let me ask some questions. Let me call around. By the next morning, the parents were ecstatic. They called me and they were like, thank you so much. He's going to be able to play. And I want to check back in, actually. I want to see how well he's doing, because he was supposedly very good. What does this mean? It means that before we argue about why we might want to deny access for various reasons, we need to understand whether or not we can. Before we argue about why we should be able to close those schools off to capacity, or why we should be able to do this, we need to be able to understand whether or not we even can. Expressly by statute and constitution, capacity cannot be used as a gatekeeping mechanism. Now, there's still a whole lot of other ways they could dubiously deny someone.
Don't give them any hints.
I'm not going to say them out loud. I'm not, but this isn't one of them. What does it mean? It means parents know your rights and know how to discuss them. And if you have questions, or you get hung up, or you want to run through a mock argument, we've got a great tool we're launching on Discord where you can get in and do kind of those things and talk with other parents, or talk with some of the people that are going to be leaders in communities that we work with and that have experience, or us, because we'll be in there as well. And our Discord community is a wonderful place to go and find that kind of practice and help and confidence, but know your rights and know how to discuss them, because you are going to get pushback. You are. And what does this mean for, not necessarily in the same line of thought, but I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. This means you're not guaranteed a spot. You can't school hop. You're allowed to participate. And that in and of itself is a self-limiting factor. If you're good enough to make the team, you make the team just like everybody else. If you're not good enough to make the team, you can't school hop and play anywhere else, because that's also expressly stated in there. So understand what it means. We're not going to be packing a school with super talent. There's already things, again, that in statute don't really even allow that. And like Brenda said, it's never happened. It's been here for 30 plus years. It's never happened. So let's move on to real arguments, and let's base them off of the statutes themselves. That kind of concludes the, what do I call it? The walkthrough, the statutory walkthrough the breakdown for 1006.153C. Home education students have the right to play at their zoned public school, a school they could choose through open enrollment, or a private school that will make an agreement with them. And there are criteria that they have to meet to be able to do that, spelled out beneath that, and capacity is not among them. So,
can we hit some questions?
Let's go back. We've got enough of a pause there. Let's go back. We'll clip that. How far in are we? Wow, that took a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. I'm so sorry to everyone. Go ahead.
If we can hit the questions,
yeah,
we've got
some
them. Really thoughtful questions. Brad Campen, I just want to tell you, I see your question. It was posted like 40 minutes ago. I'm going to come back to it, but I want to start with Kim's, because Kim's are more directly related to what we were just talking about, and yours is like a cousin issue. So we'll come back. Kim Hannon said, so to clarify, does that mean a student can try out for a team at their non-zone school, even if that school is closed due to capacity, and even if they would traditionally not be able to attend that school through school choice?
State it again. Sorry, I was reading Brad's. I'm sorry.
We'll come back to Brad's.
Okay, we'll come back to Brad's. Brad, I'm holding on tightly to your question.
Yeah.
Read Kim's again. I'm so sorry.
So to clarify, does that mean a student can try out for a team at their non-zone school, even if that school is closed due to capacity, and even if they would traditionally not be able to attend that school through school choice?
That's correct. Yes. Yes.
Because capacity does not apply to the extracurriculars.
It's not a valid gatekeeping or limiting factor as applied by statute. It's not listed. It's not stated. There's ample opportunity in the criteria, and there's ample opportunity in every mention or any of those statutes that it could be used as a gatekeeping mechanism, and it's invalidated as such at every step. So.
And then Kim's follow-up question was, if a family is given inaccurate information by their county or local school, what steps do you recommend they take in order to fight the decision made?
So one, share this video. There's a reason why I devoted this entire podcast today to this subject and broke it down the way that I did. I want to see our home education community thrive with accurate information. I think that's critical. And having that information gives them that confidence. When they can hear it, listen to it over and over and over, familiarize themselves with it, put it on a playlist and play it back. This is going to be on YouTube, on Rumble. You can listen to it at length. Do that. That's one. And then two, you're going to have to very carefully get them to other aspects of the statute. So something that we didn't go into, but is there. Let me find it. I've got all these tabs. Okay. There is a waitlist requirement. So in the event that they double, triple, quadruple down on going, no, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to use capacity as a limiting factor. It's like, okay, sweet. You have now locked yourself into a certain course of action. The 1002.31 statute requires, let me zoom in on this so that everyone can see it. It requires the school district to maintain a wait list of students who are denied access due to capacity. So if that's what they're going to use, this is their requirement. And they must notify parents when space becomes available. And then here's what I would, as a parent, what I would suggest that you do. I would suggest that you say, if that's your stance, one, we don't agree with you, so disagree, don't accept it. Verbally state that you disagree with it. Say, if that's your stance, we disagree with it and we think that you're in violation of the statutes. But as such, if you are citing capacity as the reason why we cannot participate, I require a wait list to be made visible, and I want to know my student's position on it, and you are required by statute to let me know the moment space becomes available so that I may participate. And then you hold their feet to the fire from that angle. And then they go, what is capacity? What is that school's capacity? What are the numbers? Where is that data? There's no list. Where's the information? A lot of these things are stuff that they just hoping parents will hear them and then go away. That's really what it comes down to. They want parents to go, oh, I'm sorry. Well, you're the rule maker. You're the superintendent. You know everything. So, I guess it's capacity and there's no real way you're going to listen to me. I guess that's it. No, that's not it. Hold their feet to the fire and make them show you the data. They are required by law to make a list, show you when you're on the list, and show you when you're on the list, off the list. So by all means, hold them to that. If you go out there, if you really want to be ornery about it, and you go up there every single day to check, where am I on the list? Where am I on the list? Where am I on the list? They're required to tell you when space becomes available. And I want to know so that I can not miss my opportunity. Because in some counties, what I've heard that they will do is they will go, you're next up on the list. Oh, but you're a home education student, so you don't take a seat. Let's go to the next student on the list. And they completely skip the home education student because they don't even take a seat in the classrooms anyway. So they go, we don't need to worry about that. And then they never alert the parents to let them know. By all means, that's wrong. And by statute, that's wrong. So holding their feet to the fire in these specific ways, knowing that particular statute as well is key. That's parens J.
All right, I want to hit. I am going to come back to your question, Brad. But I want to hit Jen and Andrew Blair because it's directly related to the extracurriculars. I'm curious how homeschoolers using an umbrella school fit into all this.
Okay, that's a great question. So, homeschoolers that are using an umbrella school are private school students by law. So they're not technically home education students. So remember how the criteria in 1006.153C starts, and it says that a student, I'm going to highlight it here, a home education student must meet the requirements of the home education program pursuant to 1002.41. Umbrella school students can't meet that requirement because they're not enrolled as home education students with a letter of intent to their county. That doesn't mean that they couldn't perhaps fit the criteria for private school students, as long as they do also fit the criteria for private school students participating. The school has to be, I think, an FHSAA member, and there's other criteria, but this particular statute and this particular section doesn't apply to umbrella school students. This is one of the reasons where, one of those ways where we get kind of hung up on a colloquial use of a term and then a statutory use of a term. So remember how the construction and intent reading it has to be read with the statutory definition of something. So the statutory definition for this is the 1002.41 method of enrolling as home education. Brenda,
However, at the end of that 1006.15, there is a provision for students who are in private schools that are not FHSAA members, and there is a limit on the number of students that can be in that private school. And they've changed it twice. I think the capacity is like 150 or something like that of the private school. I've forgotten what the number is, but there is a number there later on in the statute. So there are a couple of criterias there. That's what the bill that we're trying to amend addresses.
Yes.
1565 was the intent to make it so that any private school student could participate.
You mean 248? Sorry, Senate Bill 248.
Well, that's the Senate bill. What's the companion?
151 in the House.
Okay.
The House bill companion 151. Yeah. Yeah. So, and to answer the question, the home education portion of the statutes don't apply to umbrella schools because they're private schools. The private school portion of that statute would apply to them. And maybe we should do another video on those.
Debbie Cooper Dykes, just to add to that, commented, small umbrella private schools may participate in extracurricular activities. So I think that's what Brenda was saying, is there is a section for that. But I do think it's important to note, because I think there may be umbrella schoolers who don't realize that by statute they're considered private school students. So you'll be looking for the section of statutes that refer to private schools, not the sections that refer to home education students. And on that topic, really quick, because we need to hit Brad's question, how would PEP students fit in? Because I know there are going to be people watching that are wondering this as well.
Let's go there. That is, I think, 1002.01's definitions. In the definitions, remember how we go to definitions to address something specifically and understand what's expressly stated for them and carved out. In the definition of a personalized education program, that is statute 1002.01. And that's a great question because it's not intuitive. It's not listed. It's not stated in 1006. So if you didn't know this, this might be complete news to you.
It would not be easy to find if you didn't know it was there. Yeah.
They're not linked. They're not referenced. So it's very important that you asked that question. I'm glad you did. A personalized education program means the sequentially progressive instruction of a student directed by his or her parent to satisfy the attendance requirements of 1003.01 and 1003.21 while registered with an eligible nonprofit scholarship funding organization pursuant to 1002.395, that's where PEP is. A personalized education student shall be provided the same flexibility and opportunities as provided in 1002.41 and 3 through 12. So let's go over there now that we have that reference, 3 through 12. Where's 3? 3 is here. A home education student program shall be exempted from meeting the requirements of a school day And then 4, and this is the key one, a home education student may participate in interscholastic extracurricular student activities in accordance with provisions of 1006.15. So number 4 in that reference point is your red flag or your beaming banner under which you stand as a PEP student. You are to be treated in extracurriculars the same way as a home education student would be. So with the FHSAA, you'll fill out non-traditional student forms and all of that kind of stuff. Everywhere that you participate here, you'll just be treated as synonymous with home education student.
So
in fact,
when you
to avoid confusion, I think the FHSAA just calls you non-traditional students.
Yeah, I think they have a form specifically for PEP students now.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to make sure we highlighted this explanation. Like, this is why PEP students by statute must be afforded the same opportunities and flexibilities as home education students, because it says that in the definition of personalized education program.
It does.
So that is, if you're arguing with a school because your student is PEP and they're saying that the Craig Dickinson Act does not apply to you, that 1006.15 does not apply, you can go to the definition of the personalized education program in 1002.01, and it'll link you right back to those paragraphs within the home education statute that you also have the right to.
So let's bounce back off of this to Brad Campen's
Brad's question,
because it fits.
It does.
He says, do you want to read it?
Sure.
Okay.
He said he had just joined in, but I'll skip that part. He said, we are having an issue in Alachua County, not with sports, but with classes. Our kids are able to participate in clubs, robotics, debate, but not the actual class. The teacher and principal want my son to be able to be in the robotics class, but the county doesn't know or care to know how to bill for it. I've researched the statute and it seems a little murky as to whether the school board must allow this or has an option. Can you give any clarification on this?
Sure. So I think it's very important to realize that if they're going to extend the flexibility and opportunity to home education students, they must treat PEP students the exact same way. So they can't choose one and not the other.
And he doesn't say in his question whether his kids are PEP or home education.
I know. I just wanted to start from here because it's a great way to pivot into that conversation. The funding comes differently, right? So for a home education student with a letter of intent through the county, they can draw down funds for that student directly into the school for them taking that class. With PEP, it's different. The money goes to the parent, and the parent has to spend the money at the school. And you're right, they don't always have a mechanism for figuring out how to get that funding done. That's not your problem. That's their problem. If they're going to serve home education students, they must also serve PEP students, period. They can choose to do it for free, or they can choose to figure out how to get paid for it, because the funding can come straight from the SFO. There's like 7 counties now that have come on board as providers within the marketplace. They have always been able to do this from day one. There has been no amendment or change needed to the program to allow them to participate as providers in the program and to get paid. There has only been them dragging their feet through the mud and not doing it. Parents can select to use their funds that way. If they're going to spend their staff and opportunities and their time serving home education students, they also have to serve PEP students.
So just to make sure we're thoroughly answering his question, could a school or a county choose not to allow home education or PEP students into their classes?
Brenda?
No. It's a matter of who do you talk to make them aware. And that's some of the work we do behind the scenes, because we'll go to the superintendents and association, try to reason with them, get them involved in calling. You can go to the Department of Education. Might even call in, as Jason's got a good contact in the AG's office. We might get some letters to explain to the districts how this is supposed to work.
Yes.
But no is the short answer. They can't deny.
We are working, I will say that. I didn't know if we wanted to talk about that yet or not, but we are working on acquiring some pieces of paper that would be heavyweight, and leaning toward clarifying these things. So let's say that let's go back to our conversation of the bill. Let's say that the bill doesn't make it, right? We run out of time. This is the last week of session. Nothing happens. No changes are made. This statute stays exactly the way that it is. We were very hopeful that we will have a way in that will help give clarity as we move forward. I cannot guarantee and say that we have that because we don't have that yet. But I have very good confirmation from the people who are helping us run the bill and from some who are in the Department of Education and, like Brenda said, in the Attorney General's office, that we are looking to have that opinion soon. Yeah.
Well, the department has put out in the past to clarify some issues that
They have
struggled with. So we're going to ask them for a technical assistance paper that almost holds the same weight as a statute if it comes from the Department of Education. So we have some avenues if the statute doesn't pass. We've begged for them to put into the scholarship funding organization that they would have to, that the districts would be required to form a contract with the SFOs in order to take the money and allow the students to participate. Can you imagine that we have to pass a law to make the districts take money when they say, we don't get enough money. We don't get money from these students. Well, there's a mechanism if you care to make it work. Mm-hmm. So we're not there yet with forcing the districts to do it, but there's other ways to make them do it. So we're working on those as well. We don't give up easily.
No. No. I just wanted to read Cheryl Bastian's comment. She said, "This is such an important topic. Thank you for helping spread accurate information. And yes, share this video. As a home educating mom of 7 athletes, yes, it will help everyone if we are all informed and helping to spread this info."
Yes, absolutely. There is a rules paper that was put out, laws.flrules.org. I think that was, I found that reference through a link on the Florida Department of Education's site. It's document 301 from back in 2003. And it reaffirms what we've been talking about today, that extracurricular courses are all the courses not defined as core curricular courses and that the capacity doesn't apply to them, etc. But it's just, I would like for it to be more clear and just expressly stated if we can get that. And I believe that we have the Department of Education personnel who are friendly to homeschooling. Some of them homeschool themselves. Very many of them private school. They have a heart to help. It just comes down to there's so much going on. There's so much going on. And one of the things that has been said to me by some people who, as we're working on these things within the staff, there's like, well, you know, like I know we're coming to the end of the session, but there's next year and we can keep working on this. And I'm like, I really hate that answer. I really, really hate that answer, because if you think of it this way, there's 4 years from 9th to 12th grade. And if you're in 9th grade this year and this is an issue that you're dealing with and you are hopeful that it would work, you won't, if the bill doesn't go through to clarify it, you won't see that enacted on July 1st, which means next year it won't be available, which means we'll work on it so that the soonest it could be available for you as an option will be your 11th grade year. That's just tragic to me. It's really, really tragic to me. And so we're working very hard to advocate for parents. HEF, the Home Education Foundation, let me just say this as well, is about lobbying and lobbying for the legislation and the policies and language uses to try to make sure that the statutes reflect the rights as parents to educate our own children. But HEF Connect is where we spend a lot of time advocating with parents and encouraging them, educating them, bringing them up to speed, helping them have confidence, developing their ability to talk about and discuss these things, putting together workshops where they can communicate, or communication tools where they can get the word out. And so that is the nonprofit end of what we do. And we're going to wrap up today with this, because I know we've been going on for quite a while. But if you are, if you have a business, or you know someone who has a business, or you know someone that has money and they're looking for write-offs because they're trying to hit different tax brackets and they need a good cause that they can feel good about donating money to, and then also kind of receiving their tax break, have them look at us. Have them look at our website or this video or others like it, and make them aware that there are valid, very good organizations that are needed and vital, and we do a good work. We do not charge for our services. One of the representatives asked me that the other day, like, oh, you help home education families? That's awesome. What do you charge for your services? And I proudly said $0. Nothing. Everything that we do is done for the parents because they need it and for the students because they need it. And the funding that we get is from the parents in our community and from business owners in our community who believe in the work that we do and want to see it continue. And that relationship is vital and key. But it doesn't mean we slack at any angle in conversation or debate when it comes to these issues. I don't have anything else to add other than, we love you guys. We appreciate all the work that you do and the effort that you pour into your families and try to lead the way and do the right thing by yourselves. We see you and we're here with you, and we're hopeful that we can do more like these. If there's something else that you would like to hear a topic on, a breakdown like this, please feel free to email it to us or submit it to us through our contact form, and we'll be happy to kind of break down some of the other videos like these. I know it does make a lot of people angry who are lawyers when someone who's not a lawyer starts to read through things and then pull sources from the Supreme Court and other sources, and it does make me a little happy to be able to do that. But I think that only the people who are really trying to abuse power get mad about it. Everybody else looks at their rights and goes, you know what? This is worthwhile. And you may be on to something, but let's dive into the weeds. And that's what I hope every parent here can do, is take the information we provided, chew on it, dive into the weeds. Just know what your rights are. Brenda? You want to close us out for today?
I was just going to say, going through this, you can see how much time is being spent on this. It's a full-time job. Mm-hmm. People don't think of it like that, but over the next couple of months, we'll be working hard to educate legislators, meeting with different associations and State Department to get a clarification if we can't get the law passed this year. Mm-hmm. And then it begins all over again. It is a full-time job. In fact, yes. It's almost a full-time job for two people, isn't it, Crystal?
Yes. 3 people. Brenda, you're not out yet.
So if we're doing this on your behalf, then that means that Jason can't do another job to support his family. So if it's vital to you to have this kind of representation, then strongly consider a contribution to the work.
Absolutely. Thank you. Crystal, anything from you before we wrap up?
No.
Okay. All right.
And thank you for the work that you do in answering all the questions and responding to all of the emails that come in a lot. So we appreciate your work.
Absolutely. We'll want to say one more time before we do this every time, so we'll do it again today. Thank you to our top sponsors, Arete, FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, and TBHC Group. We appreciate you being our sponsors. And for all of you parents that are out there doing your thing, fighting the good fight, raising your children, enjoy those conversations. Enjoy your memories. Enjoy your moments. And know your rights and feel confident stepping forward into your future with them, and push them and propel them and challenge them to become more and better and sharper and smarter and formidable. And we're here cheering you on. Y'all have a great day.